Hello everyone, today we're doing a deep dive into the Australian National Archives with Eva Hussain, Polaron's very own director and founder. Welcome, Eva.
Thank you, Stephanie, for that introduction. So today we're going to be discussing the National Archives of Australia, and I'll do two things. Firstly, I'll do a quick introduction about who that institution is and what it does. And secondly, we'll do a mock research activity to show you what kind of things you can find. And I would encourage anybody who has family that's come from somewhere to Australia to explore National Archives of Australia. It's one of the best archives in the world. They do have physical presence. So outside of the pandemic, you can actually go and visit. They have reading rooms and lots of different resources that you can tap into, including workshops. At the moment, none of this is happening. So the next best thing, of course, is to go to the website. And even if you're outside of Australia, you can explore it. But it's a really interesting and plentiful resource to learn more about your ancestors if you have an Australian connection. So what I'm going to do, Stephanie, is share my screen with you so that I can show you and our listeners everything there is to know about the archives in Australia. But let me first start, as I said, by introducing the archives to you. So the website is naa.gov.au, and there's a section in here that explains who they are and what they do. So it is a federal agency that keeps records of the nation of Australia and also Australian government records. These resources are available and accessible to anyone, provided they're not protected by the privacy laws in Australia, which are quite strict. They do list the types of services they provide, partnerships, and you can also get a job if you're really keen. The interesting thing with this particular archive is that it's so well organized and so accessible and written in a very easy to follow way. So for example, here they explain what is an archive. So it is a place that holds facts, data, and evidence from the past, essentially. And it might include papers, photos, films, audio recordings, but also digital files and other things. So sometimes they may be artifacts or, all kinds of interesting things that you might find. Everything is guided by the Archives Act of 1983. So they preserve documents and they release documents according to this particular act. They have a number of different collections, and I'll explain two that we normally tap into shortly. But you can be anyone. You don't have to show what they call legal interest or kinship to access most of the records, provided they're more than 30 years old. Their job is also to preserve the collection, and if you do ever get an opportunity to go in personally, you'll see that it's a temperature controlled room, a massive room with lots of records, including maps and birth certificates and all kinds of things in between. And they also digitalize all the records. So, as you can imagine, Australia is an island, so we kind of keep everything about everybody. And for that reason, they have a lot of resources, which is something I'll go through in a moment. Here they are explaining who can get access and what happens with records that may be sometimes not available to you to look at. There's information about visiting one of the research centers, which is off limits at the moment. But all of that information is here. They can also supply digital copies of records. So if you request something on your ancestors, let's say, they can send it to you via email or digitally. But for some nationalities that we work with, you'll need a certified copy, which then needs an apostille, etc. So they can also send a hard copy if needed. And they are in the process of transforming how records are kept, and that is digitalizing everything. By far, in comparison to other archives, they're probably the best in the world. Also because the records are complete, and we didn't really, have a war in Australia where records would have been destroyed. So that's just in a nutshell what they have. And if you're interested in exploring, visiting, how to become a member, how to volunteer. All of that information is on the website. Why do we use this website? We use this website to find out more information about our clients' ancestors. Sometimes we find very curious things. So I just wanted to give you a taste of what you can find. And I used a very sort of common name of Goldberg, just one that I made up. But as you can see here, so I entered this particular section by record search, which is up the top of the page. And I just carried out a basic search, which and into that I typed the name Goldberg. And let me just explain what you see when you get there. So first of all, you have records that have been digitalized. So you can see that if you have this little page here, that means that something's been scanned, and you can see it, and I'll show you in a minute. There is a symbol, so everything's obviously indexed and numbered, because how else do you find all these records? And it's listed by the name. So you've got the surname in capitals and the first name. And below that in blue, you can see the status of the access. So all of those are open, which means that somebody, in other words, an archivist, went into the archives, examined the document and made it available to the public, and scanned it, and it's sitting here. And they also, of course, have, in most cases, they have the actual copy or hard copy of it. So if you, once the reading rooms are open, you can actually go in and they'll give it to you to touch in the reading room, which is quite an interesting experience. Over here, you can also see the date range. So open means open, and they've not kept anything from the public. So it's completely open. It's an old record that's 110 or nearly 120 years old. Yeah. Here you can also see where it's physically located. So these particular records are located in Canberra. So in Canberra, and in every state actually, in Australia, there's a big building into which outside of the pandemic, you can go in and, see those records in person. And there are other states. So these particular ones are all open and located in Canberra. So let's have a look. All right, okay. Canberra. And you can see that some records are not digitalized. Not everything's digitalized. So if that's the case, you need to request them to be digitalized, and then they are made available. But I'm looking for, okay, here you can see Sydney. So it's just that there are secure facilities where these records are held, and there's one in every state. This one says not yet examined, which means that the archivist hasn't been to the archives, hasn't taken, the shoebox. Well, it's a lot more sophisticated than that, but hasn't taken the file out, hasn't examined what's in it, hasn't digitalized it. Yeah. So in this case, if Simon Goldberg, the violinist, was your great grandfather, you'd have to apply to have it examined and then open, digitalize, or whatever it is. Yeah. Canberra, Sydney. Let me see what else is there. Another one not yet examined. I'm looking for an interesting one that says open with exemptions or exceptions. Let me just see if I can see one and explain to you why that might be the case. So sometimes there are sensitive information in the archives, meaning that somebody's name or some information might need to be protected. So the archivist will make a decision to release parts of the folio, but not everything. And in the status, as soon as I find it, I'll tell you and I'll show you. But it'll say access status open with exceptions, which means that they redacted some names or kept something out of the file that's available for public. But in any case, I will now go back to the very first page because there's a lot of digitalized documents there. So let me just
so many documents though, it's amazing.
Yeah, look, it's really, really interesting. It's look quite amazing as to what's available. Oh, here we go.
There you go.
Okay, so let's have a look at this one. So we have somebody called Yankel Goldberg. And look at that. His nationality is listed as Polish and arrived 28th of January 1949 to Australia. And we're going to see, excuse me, what document he arrived on. And if you look at just one page, there's so much you can learn from this. There's so much you can read between the lines. So I'll just quickly tell you what it does have and what we use to assist our clients with their citizenship. So this part of record is called immigration file. So essentially, after the war, when people ended up as displaced, undocumented people, there were processing centers, in this case in Italy, in Germany. So people were vetted and they were given travel documents because often they didn't have passports. So this type of file is called naturalization. So this is a document called incoming passenger card. But here you can see that somebody stamped that this person was naturalized in 1955 in Brunswick. So just a little stamp can tell you a lot about what happened to Yankel. But what else happened to Yankel? Well, he arrived here on a ship called Napoli and from Italy. So prior to departing Europe, he lived in Italy in a camp. Now we've got his date of birth, which means that he arrived here as a 2-year-old child and he was born in Milan in Italy. Nationality, however, is shown as Polish, because as we know that being born in a country, if you have Polish ancestry, doesn't mean that you acquire that country's citizenship. What else does it say? So this child, who was born in Italy in 1947, at the time of arriving to Australia was 2. So he came here in 1949, 28th of January, and he was naturalized at the age of 6 in 1955. So again, from that one page, you can learn a lot. And he was given an emergency identity certificate, number 6626. He was single, being 2 years old, and he's going to live with his parents, who are not listed here. But this is the intended address. So clearly they had some sort of family, and his father, Haim, signed on his behalf because he was only 2, so he wasn't able to sign. And second page, what does it say? Oh, it's just, but they scan everything. So back and front. Yeah. Can we still see?
Yeah.
Okay. It stopped now. So I'm going to go back and let me see if I can show you an older document. So this one is for Joseph Goldberg. And dating 1914, 1920. Place of birth, Warsaw, Russia. Why does it say Russia? Because there was no Poland in 1914. So let's have a look at what this document says.
Perfect.
Beautiful. And there's 28 pages of very, very interesting information, and we won't be able to go through it all, but there's a treasure trove of information here. You can see what that he was born, that he was a pastry cook, and he was single. So I'll quickly flick through these pages, but it's quite an incredible lot of information. You can even, he was quite a tall man. He was 28 years old and 8 months at the time of arrival, hazel eyes, brown hair.
Wow.
Yeah, amazing, right? And you see his signature in a moment, which to me is something that I look at to see if somebody was educated. So, if the signature is very labored and sometimes you see people fingerprints because they can't sign. And then statement of service, I think it's to do with his army service. So not quite sure what year that is. It's potentially First or Second World War. Yeah, so he was in a unit, and that's his signature, as I said, Joseph Goldberg. So pretty fluid and fluent signature. Let me quickly see if there's anything else. There's sometimes photos, there's sometimes information about parents. So all of this is his military files, actually, it looks like. And even things like telegrams to the family, next of kin, there's you could write a book about this 28 pages, no doubt about that. So it's super. So this is October 1920, which means that he served in World War I, this person, and yeah, so soldier's badge. Look, there's super interesting information here. So we'll leave Joseph Goldberg alone for the time being. Let me see just lastly if there's anybody else that we can have a quick look. So yeah, so it looks to me like all these people were related and all of them served in the army. So I wouldn't be surprised that if we were to click on it. But I want to find one for you where you can see a passport. So let me see if I can. Okay, I have a feeling that that one might, but I don't know. So we're looking at Raymond Gershon Goldberg, born in 1919. No, these are military files. And there's 42 pages of very, very interesting stuff. So if anybody can claim Gershon Goldberg, you can write a book. But he was an airman. Let me see, 1939, 48. I'm just really keen to show you what the Australian government kept on people, 39. So I need to find something before 1939. So prior to 1939, if you applied for your Australian citizenship, you'd need to give your former passport to the Australian government, and they've kept it. So I'm just looking for something prior to 1939, which I'm not being very successful at the moment. But let me see if I can. Otherwise, we'll give up and people can find it themselves. But what you're looking for is prior to 1939. No, oh, maybe this one. Okay, nationality German. Let's have a look at that one. Harry Goldberg. Harry Goldberg, born in 1882, arrived from Germany in 1939. Now, the interesting thing with this person and everybody else that arrived from Germany, regardless of whether they were Jewish or otherwise, they were declared enemy aliens and they were interned in Australia at the outbreak of the war. So if you were to explore his information a bit further, you'll see it wasn't for a long time, but people were essentially detained as enemy aliens. Yeah. All right. So I've stopped sharing. There's one other thing I want to show everybody, and then I'll move on to other things. So you can, in National Archives of Australia, there's advanced search where you can search, you can do a name search with advanced features. You can search for photos. So let's say I put Goldberg in here. Let's see what we can find. There you go. There are actual photos from the news outlets and all kinds of things like that you can find. You can also go passenger arrivals, and I'll show you what you can find. You can find incoming passenger cards, which are really telling and very interesting. So these are passenger lists, but I will see if I can find something a bit more recent. Yeah, there we go, 1969. Okay. So you can see that this person traveled out of Australia and back into Australia. It's a little bit hard to read. The handwriting's a bit shaky. But this person traveled to Israel from Australia in 1969. So an incoming passenger cards, it stopped sharing the screen again, but let me just show you. So all of them are listed here, and there's 1,047 of them. And you can essentially open them up and have a look at what people said themselves. So there's their own handwriting, their own information that they've put in. So that is all I have about National Archives of Australia. And I encourage everybody very much to go to that website and explore it. Like, you can honestly spend hours. The good thing about Australia, as I said, is that if your family came to Australia, their records will be there. Sometimes you might need to try a variety of spelling or, a few wild cards to see what comes up. But otherwise, you are sure to find records on your family. If they're not there online, it's most likely that the archives haven't digitalized it. So there is a contact us submission form that you can write to the archives yourself and request those details and that information to be digitalized. But as you can see, Stephanie, lots of very, very good resources, and often we discover lots of very interesting things about our clients' ancestors just by going through the archives.
Yeah, I was amazed by the amount of detail that is involved. I know you said they're probably the best archives in the world, but there's a lot of information there for people to be looking up, which is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can go back as far as the first fleet. So it doesn't matter when people arrive. They do have, like, obviously if you go back to 100 years, they'll have limited documentation, but there are some, passenger lists and other resources that people can get access to. But anyone that's arrived, say after 1900, you will be able to find your family's records. So I strongly encourage you to do so.
Thanks so much, Eva. And just a reminder to everyone to check out our social media. We are always uploading very useful information to help you get citizenship.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you.